because I am working on documents and doing things that maybe I haven't told you before, and I feel like you need to know, I am just going to do these little videos and post them in our little Facebook group. And it's just a small group right now, but hopefully there'll be several of us coming soon. So this is a book I'm working on, and it is, I have the cover. This is just a mock-up of the cover. And what I'm going to do is, I didn't do this cover. Actually, a designer friend of mine did. And I could easily ask her what font she used on the title, for the title. But I'm not going to just yet. If I can't find the font, I will. So I'm going to have this up on our other screen because I work off 3 screens. So I'm going to have this on another screen. So you're not going to see it as I'm doing what I'm doing. So I want my title page to match that same font on this chapter, on the title page for the book. So this is page 1. Or FM1. If you wondered what the page numbers on these, FM stands for front matter. And so this is front matter 1 to front matter 8. And then the page numbering starts with chapter 1. And traditionally in nonfiction books where you may have a lot of front matter, it actually gets Roman numerals, and Roman numerals starts with the title page. So if you ever see like a nonfiction book that has like this really lengthy prologue, and the prologue starts like on page 8 or Roman numeral 8, that's why. Because traditionally your page numbering begins for your front matter with the very first page of the book. And then the regular numbering usually begins with chapter 1. And then the end matter doesn't matter. You can number it or not number it. It really doesn't matter. If you have a nonfiction book and it has like an index and all of this appendices, then yes, you definitely want to number your end matter. But if it's just a novel and you're going to have like an acknowledgments page about the author, you don't need to number them, but you can if you want. That's really up to you. All right, so anyway, going back to the font, and I'm probably going to use that font for chapter title as well, and probably the author did say she doesn't like drop caps, so I'm not going to do a drop cap. And I'll explain to you why this is still in drop cap right now, because right now I'm just at the point where I am creating a couple of interior concepts to present to her to choose from. With my formatting, I do 2 different options. I do a template-based format, or I do a custom-based format. And let's just quickly, I'll show you. Template-based means it's cheaper for them to order it, but it's not a custom design. They go to my formatting page and they say, they choose between all of these formats right here. So I have basically 12 different ones. All look a little differently. This could be like a fantasy book or even a romance. It's got feathers on it. But then that same book, I have the text styling and the scene break as the feather, but I don't have any other feathers on there. So they like the font of that, they can either have it with decoration or without. So basically I only have 6 templates, with or without decoration. Okay, so my clients, if they want level 1, they just tell me which one they want, and this is easy peasy. I can do this quick and easy. And then level 2 is where I do 2 concepts for them to start with. And usually I don't have too many clients that make me do any additional concepts. Usually they have a hard time picking between the 2 concepts I do give them. And but I will do up to 4 concepts for them if those first 2 concepts do not hit what they're looking for. So this particular job I'm working on is a custom job. So that's why normally I would set the font based on what template it is, and I actually have different templates for each template just to save time. So, um, so with this custom job, I can match her title just like it is on her book cover. Long story short, I know I'm long-winded. I'm sorry. What can I do? I can't help it. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we are going to go to Adobe Fonts. Now, the great thing about having a subscription to the Creative Cloud with Adobe is that you have a ton of fonts right at your little fingertips. It's wonderful. You can access them by going to fonts.adobe.com, and it should log you in automatically. You'll see that I am logged in, and you can search, you can browse the fonts, and you can browse them based on different characteristics. Another way you can access Adobe fonts is in any of the Adobe programs by going to Find More. All right, so you can click on Find More, and then you can filter it. We want to filter it by sans serif because we know that the title on the front cover is a sans serif, and it's actually narrow. We know that's a narrow font. So if you don't know those things, those are just the things that you'll typically learn as you're learning more about fonts and stuff. So this is a narrow sans serif font, where this one is a thin sans serif font, but it's not narrow, it's regularly spaced. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to move that back out of the way. Now, if we click on Find More, and we filter them by that sans serif, these are all the fonts that are available through Adobe Creative Cloud. So these are all the fonts, and so I can, before I even install them and activate the font, and actually we don't install Adobe fonts. They activate them, and then you can deactivate them so it doesn't choke up your computer, okay? Which is great because fonts can really, if you're a font collector like me, you can get yourself in trouble. Now, in looking at this, I'm not going to do it this way. I'll show you an easier way to do it, but because I'm trying to match something, I'm looking for something very specific. But if you were looking for, you know, a certain kind of font, but you didn't know, you could do the Find More, and this accesses everything that's on this site here. And then you can activate it on the fly and use it right there. Okay, so that's a great little feature. Now, what we're going to do is we're actually going to go to the website, and I am going to say sans serif, and I want a narrow width. And, you know, you can see all these different properties here. And we're going to type chain of title. And then what happens is that I'm looking for a couple of things. I'm looking for a C that has some pretty deep ends here. So that's a unique characteristic of this font. And then where the line on the A is. Okay, now all these little things have names for them, but I'm not going to get that technical with them because I'd have to look them up myself because I can never remember them. I just do them. So I'm going to, again, move this over, and this is where, as a designer, you can spend a lot of time searching for things. That's why in most cases I probably would just reach out to the designer and say, hey, what's the name of that font you used? And this particular designer would tell me in a heartbeat, and I love that. So always play nice with other designers because they're there to help you out. And that's the great thing is we have a great design community on Facebook. So we're all friends. We all talk. All right, so I'm looking at the C. This one's kind of close, but not exactly. This one's more curved. So that one's a little bit too much. And this one, it's exactly this font right here. I can tell you that right now. The characteristics, like see where the line in the A falls, see the way the C is, the way the curves, this is exact font acumen. So I don't have to email her and ask her. If I do, I'll say, is acumen the font you used? And then I won't have to worry about it. All right, so now I have to see, I probably already have this font installed because it's a very common font. So, and it's got a million different things. Oh, yeah. All right, so this is the font. Okay, so I'm going to make that pretty and make it matchy-matchy a little bit later. I'm not going to worry about showing you that. The next thing I want to show you is bleeds. Now, this book probably will not wind up having a bleed, but one of the samples I send her, I'm going to show her a bleed. I'm going to show her a design with a bleed. So the template that you have is not set up for a bleed, but it can easily be changed to set up for a bleed. So to do a bleed, you go to File, Document Setup, and we're going to add a bleed right here on this menu. For POD printing, so for print on demand, whether you're using Ingram Spark or KDP or Barnes & Noble, the bleed is always going to be 1/8 of an inch all the way around except on in your gutter. So your inside is going to be 0, but top, bottom, and outside is going to be 0.125, which is 1/8 of an inch. Okay, so now you're like, well, what changed? Well, this red outline here, that's our bleed. So if I have any graphic, and I'm just going to quickly, and I'm not going to do this for this book, but I'm just showing you this for sample purposes. If I had a background that I wanted to add to this page, this is going to be hideous, so just ignore it. Ooh, super large. All right, so this is 6 inches, so 6.25. All right, so let's say this was a space book and I wanted to add this as a background. The graphic needs to extend all the way to or beyond the bleed, okay? So something that you need to pay attention to is that this gray line here, that's the book trim size. So for this particular book, it's 6 by 9. And then this red line is our bleed line. So if we toggle the view, you'll see that the bleed goes away because InDesign knows that that bleed is going to be trimmed off. Okay, so if you have artwork that's going to go past, extend all the way to the edge, we need to have that 1/8 bleed in there. Reason being is what's going to happen is the printer is going to print this. This is a 6 by 9. They'll print this on larger paper. Every printer is different. They may print it on 8.5 by 11, or they may do it on smaller sheets. It all depends. And what they're going to do is they're going to take this, they're going to print it, then they're going to stack the pages together, and they're going to trim it as close as they can to the trim line. And that bleed gives you some variable allowances. So if the printer is off in their cutting, it's still going to look okay because we extended the artwork beyond the trim. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. So you just need to size your artwork to fit that bleed all the way. All right. So another quick example, let's say we wanted to do Let me think. Let's see. I should have thought about having some samples for you guys. All right, here's a quick one. Let's say we wanted this cherry to bleed off the page. This would not look good, so don't ever mimic what I'm showing you. Let's just say we wanted it to only show one. That's how we would do it, okay? So think of like mandalas. You could do like a mandala decoration on certain books. I've done that many times, and then you can make the transparency like only about 15%, so it's really light. It barely shows when it's visibly printed, but you can see it just a hair. So just remember, these kind of things add to it on an ebook, and you wouldn't be able to do something like this in an ebook. Something like this would be better positioned, like centered or something. And you really can't have backgrounds in an ebook. So in that case of that galaxy, we couldn't have that on top of the title or anything. For this particular book, what I'm going to do, because her title has this gradient, and you see the top part of the model is a little light, and then it gets darker and darker and darker. This is a gradient. So in one of the samples I do for her, I'm going to mimic that look from the cover. So what I'm going to do is actually I'm going to look at my layers panel, and I'm going to add a new layer below my main layer, and I'm going to call it background. Okay, and this is just so I can keep them separate. I am going to click on the little rectangle tool, and I'm actually going to draw from my bleed, from the bottom bleed all the way up to the top. And I'm going to, right now it has a black fill, a black stroke. I'm just going to click on the little thing. It's going to give me a black, fill that box black all the way. We don't want that. So we're going to go to gradient. And what a gradient is going to do is we want a linear gradient. Okay, so it's taking these two colors, white and black, and you can change these, but remember this is a black and white document, so it doesn't matter. And then we're going to play around with the angle. I actually want the black to come in from the bottom. All right, so we're going to try an angle of 180. You just play around with it. That reverses it from that point. Let's see. Okay, there's our black at the bottom. So you just play around with it to get what you want. Okay. And because it's white up top, I may change it a little bit so it's barely a gradient. And I could even pull this down so it's just gray and doesn't really completely come black. And then we can also bring it down even more. So it's just a touch. So those are just the different things you can play around with. All right, I don't want that harsh line, so that's why I have it all the way up. And I'm going to bring it past the thing there. All right, so that's just giving you a little bit of information about bleeds.